Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Sitora, and I'm a second-year PhD candidate at the University of Essex. And it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be presenting here today among other distinguished and experienced ODR practitioners and scholars. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of ODR Cyber Week for giving me this opportunity to share my work, which focuses on the implementation of ODR, online dispute resolution, in business to consumer disputes within the Commonwealth of Independent States, or CIS region. Well, first I'd like to start with the research problem and the motivation behind starting this particular project. Over the past decade, e-commerce in the CIS region has been growing at an unprecedented pace, and it has become an increasingly important part of the national economies. And for instance, in Russia, which leads the region in this sector, the total volume of online sales reached 2.6 trillion rubles in the first quarter of 2025, which is a 36% increase compared to the same period last year. In Uzbekistan, where the e-commerce market is considered to have particularly strong growth potential, KPMG estimates that the compound annual growth rate between 2022 and 2027 will range between 41.4 and 47.4%. And similarly, in Kazakhstan, the second largest e-commerce market in the region, the total value of online trade estimated at $6.2 billion by the end of 2024. Consumers across the region actively use regional marketplaces such as Wildberries, Ozon for cross-border transactions, as well as domestic online marketplaces like Uzum in Uzbekistan and Kaspi in Kazakhstan for domestic purchases. The number of online shoppers continues to grow rapidly each year, driven by expanding internet access and rising levels of digital literacy. Although purchasing power and the transaction volumes remain lower compared to regions such as North America or Europe, the overall trajectory of digital trade in the CIS is stable and promising. However, this rapid growth of the digital markets has not matched by the development of effective consumer redress mechanisms adapted to the realities of e-commerce practices in the region. And there are several problems that I identified in my research. The main challenges are multifaceted. Dispute resolution in the CIS remains largely state-centric and court-reliant. Court processes are often slow, formalistic, and inaccessible to ordinary consumers. And alternative dispute resolution mechanisms are underdeveloped, poorly institutionalized, and in many cases are not trusted, particularly when it comes to consumer disputes. As a result, the digital justice gap is widening, especially in low-value and high-volume cross-border disputes where consumers frequently abandon their claims rather than pursue them. And more fragmented legislation in the field of e-commerce, consumer protection, and ADR prevents the coordinated development of online mechanisms. And added to this, a general lack of trust in both ADR institutions and the judiciary, which discourages consumers from seeking justice at all. This combination of rapid digitalization and weak redress systems leaves millions of online consumers in the CIS region without effective access to justice, highlighting the urgent need for a more efficient, accessible, and technology-driven solution. And now I'd like to move on to the research objective and research questions. Building on global and regional experiences, the primary objective of my research is to design a context-sensitive ODR framework that would be suitable for the CIS e-commerce landscape. And this framework draws on international lessons, but is also tailored to the region's specific legal, technological, and socio-cultural realities. To achieve this, my research addresses three main questions. First, what are the limitations of existing business-to-consumer dispute resolution mechanisms in the CIS region? And this involves examining the inefficiencies, fragmented legislation, and the limited trust in both ADR and court systems. And second, what lessons can be learned from international ODR practices? And by analyzing the experiences of the European Union, the United States, Canada, and China, and other regions, my aim is to identify which elements might be adaptable to the CIS context. And third, how can a practical and adaptable ODR framework be developed for the CIS, one that aligns with local regulatory structures, technological capacity, and consumer culture? And by answering these questions, my research seeks to propose a workable ODR solution that bridges the digital justice gap and builds consumer confidence in the region's online marketplaces. And before delving further, I'd like to briefly revisit the background of ADR and ODR, as there may be some participants who are new to these concepts. Alternative dispute resolution refers to non-judicial mechanisms such as mediation, negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and conciliation. The literature, academic literature, often distinguishes between court and exit or court integrated and extrajudicial ADR. The first applies when courts refer parties to ADR forms like mediation and arbitration or negotiations. And second applies when parties themselves voluntarily choose resolving their problem without going to court, either using negotiations or mediation. This and other classifications of ADR are briefly discussed in chapter 2 of my research. And ADR has long been recognized as an effective means of easing the burden on courts and providing parties with flexible, cost-effective, and confidential solutions. However, the extent of ADR use for consumer disputes varies significantly across different jurisdictions. For example, in the European Union and in the United States of America, consumer ADR is well institutionalized through certified ADR bodies or self-regulatory bodies to ensure professional standard and public trust. By contrast, in the CIS countries, although Forms such as arbitration and mediation are legally recognized. They remain underdeveloped, widely distrusted for consumer disputes. Where mediation exists and where it is mandatory, such as in some family or divorce cases, it is often more symbolic than substantive. Parties sometimes go through mediation merely to recover court fees or comply with procedural rules, rather than genuinely seeking settlement. This reactive rather than proactive use of ADR reflects the weaknesses of both institutional frameworks and ADR culture in the region. Moreover, ADR in its traditional offline format has become increasingly unsuitable for small value consumer disputes due to court-like burdens such as travel, time, and resource costs. At the same time, the rapid growth of digital markets and cross-border trade has created new types of disputes that require faster, more accessible, scalable solutions. Accordingly, the developments have driven the transition from ADR to online dispute resolution. ODR was originally promoted as a mechanism to handle cross-border e-commerce disputes and was initially viewed merely as a digital extension of ADR. However, it has since evolved far beyond that concept. Today, ODR tools are increasingly integrated into judicial systems across the world, particularly in online small claim courts, procedures, and digitized court processes. In this broader sense, ODR now encompasses both ADR-based and court-related mechanisms, as well as internal complaint handling systems operated by major online platforms such as Amazon, eBay, and AliExpress. They're also included in the concept of ODR. In addition to this, corporate systems, independent AI-supported ODR services like Smart Settle and Cyber Settle, even blockchain-based platforms like Claros have emerged. Although my research focuses primarily on extrajudicial ODR mechanisms, it also briefly considers court and exit models and explains why such models may not be efficient in the context of the CIS region. And the main reasons are judicial inefficiency, low digital readiness of courts, and limited consumer trust in state-led justice systems. And now you may legitimately ask, why the CIS region? And now here I'd like to give a little bit background about the formation, about some common features. The Commonwealth of Independent States was established in 1991, bringing together former Soviet republics that share a common legal heritage and face similar institutional challenges. And these include fragmented legislative environment, incoherent consumer protection and e-commerce laws, and underdeveloped ADR frameworks that often, and dispute resolution systems that often rely on courts. And concerns also persist regarding data protection and the functioning of technological infrastructures, while public trust in both courts and ADR remains generally low. And this is not to say that the member states are not progressing at all. In fact, there are positive developments at both national and regional levels. Several countries have launched digital transformation strategies and have initiated regional cooperation on cross-border trade. Yet, these efforts are often unsystematic and scattered, lacking coordination and consistency. Consumers continue to face limited access to to effective cross-border redress, especially in e-commerce transactions. This results in a digital justice gap where consumers frequently abandon, as I mentioned earlier, their claims altogether. Despite the growth of online purchases across borders, the CIS remains underrepresented in global discussions on legal innovation, which makes it an important and timely context for studying how ODR could be implemented, adapted effectively to its realities. And my research adopts a hybrid methodological approach that combines doctrinal and qualitative methods. The main component is doctrinal legal research across multiple jurisdictions, including the European Union, the United States of America, Canada, China, and the CIS itself. This involves the examination of national legislation, EU regulations, UNCITRAL model rules, and relevant case law, as well as ODR practices in these regions. It is important, however, to note that this is not a comparative study in the traditional sense. While a comparative perspective is used where appropriate, the aim is not simply to contrast the strengths and weaknesses of foreign systems, but to identify what may or what may not work within the CIS context. And the qualitative component complements this analysis through semi-structured interviews. So far, I have conducted 8 interviews with ADR practitioners, judges, marketplace, complaint handling specialists, academics from the CIS region and other regional systems. These interviews are particularly important because the existing literature on the CIS is fragmented, and a few interdisciplinary studies combine consumer protection, e-commerce, and dispute resolution. The interviews therefore provide practical insights into how disputes are currently handled and help fill the important information gap. Supporting sources include academic literature by scholars such as Cortez, Suskind, Abdel, Katch, Rainey, Brew, Wing, Hodges, Fayos, and Zheng. While I'm mentioning only a selection of authors in this presentation, my theoretical framework is grounded in an extensive review of literature. Additional sources include case studies on blockchain, AI, and other technological applications in ODR. In addition, I rely on reports from international organizations like OECD, and UNCITRAL, UNCTAD, and on national digital justice strategies. The thesis structure is structured around a global to local logic, beginning with the examination of international approaches, global trends in online dispute resolution, and progressively narrowing its focus to the specific context of the CIS region. Chapter 1 introduces the topic of consumer dispute resolution in e-commerce, establishes the research problem, objectives and research questions, along with the methodology, and provides a brief overview of global trends in ODR, including regional frameworks, and offers context about the rapid growth of e-commerce in the CIS countries and the urgent need for an efficient and accessible dispute resolution mechanism. Chapter 2, the second substantive chapter of my thesis, traces the transition from ADR to ODR and explores why this shift became necessary. It begins by providing a critical overview of ADR with its systemic limitations in consumer disputes and explains how the rise of digital communication technologies has shaped the way disputes can be managed. And the chapter also examines international advocacy for ODR, particularly the efforts of UN-CITRAL, the OECD, the European Union in promoting the principles such as accessibility, transparency, efficiency, and fairness. This chapter concludes that while ADR remains a valuable mechanism, it's no longer sufficient on its own to meet the demands of the digital economy, particularly in high volume, low value consumer disputes. And chapter 3 examines major challenges in ODR implementation, focusing on legal, institutional, technological, ethical, AI-related and socio-cultural aspects. Legal and institutional challenges include the absence of a unified global ODR framework, fragmented legislation at regional and national levels, inconsistencies in implementation and enforcement issues, and technological issues concern building a reliable tech infrastructure with proper digital integration and system security, including data protection, technical capacity, while ethical issues relate to potential biases in algorithmic decision-making in AI-driven processes. Sociocultural challenges include low levels of digital literacy, digital divide, limited consumer awareness, and varying degrees of public trust in online mechanisms. This discussion sets the stage for examining how individual regions have established and maintained the ODR systems and how they have addressed some of these challenges. While these issues are observed globally, they can be equally or even more acute in the context of the CIS, highlighting the importance of adapting ODR frameworks to local realities. As a potential solution to some of the technological and process-related challenges, the chapter briefly discusses Kleros, a decentralized dispute resolution protocol. And one of the important chapters in my thesis is chapter 4, which discusses the EU consumer ADR framework established under the ADR directive and the now repealed ODR regulation. Although the EU ODR platform, once a cornerstone of consumer redress, was discontinued due to financial unsustainability and low usage, handling around 200 cases a year, the broader framework continues to serve as a benchmark model. It provides guidance on how ADR can be institutionalized in a digital context through integration with ADR bodies and a centralized approach. A notable similarity between the EU and the CIS is that most institutional changes in both regions are driven by state initiatives, whether at national or regional levels. For the CIS, the EU model illustrates the potential for state-supported digital ADR. Though some adaptations are needed, they are essential since legal transplants are not fully feasible and workable. So lessons from other regions alongside EU experience will inform context-specific solutions for the CIS ODR framework. Chapter 5 discusses the American ODR system. In the United States of America, ODR is largely market-driven and diverse, reflecting the decentralized nature of dispute resolution. Independent private ODR providers like AAA, Better Business Bureau, CyberSettle, they offer technology-enabled dispute resolution services across sectors. And meanwhile, major companies like eBay, PayPal, Amazon operate platform-based ODR systems, complaint handling mechanisms embedded within their marketplaces to resolve disputes directly between buyers and sellers. Another important aspect is the widespread use of arbitration clauses in consumer contracts, which can channel the consumer disputes to ODR or arbitration, but may also restrict access to courts or class actions depending on enforceability. Current advocacy in this regard emphasizes clearer, consumer-friendly drafting of these arbitration clauses to ensure that lay consumers understand their dispute resolution options. The US experience demonstrates the benefits of flexible, technology-driven approaches while highlighting the importance of careful integration of arbitration clauses to maintain consumer trust and to protect consumers. While highly effective at scale, this private sector-led model may not yet be efficient for the CIS context, where consumer trust and institutional foundations are still developing. And here you can see some illustrations of the internal complaint handling systems, the links to the internal complaint handling systems and some independent ODR providers. Chapter 6 discusses Canadian ODR practices, highlighting technology, institutional support, and professional standards. They are combined to create an effective dispute resolution ecosystem in Canada. The CRT Civil Resolution Tribunal in British Columbia is the world's first fully online tribunal with binding jurisdiction for small claims and strata disputes, demonstrating how digital processes can replace or complement traditional adjudication. Parler, developed at the University of Montreal, provides automated negotiation tools for consumer and civil disputes, integrating structured workflow and guided negotiation. Smart Settle is an AI-supported platform that uses blind bidding to facilitate negotiation and settlement without revealing offers prematurely, and by this improving the efficiency and fairness. The ADR Institute of Canada, ADRIC, promotes professional ADR standards and supports ODR adoption through practitioner training and accreditation. Together, all these examples illustrate a multi-level approach combining public institutions, private platforms, AI-driven solutions that enhances access to justice and provides valuable lessons for designing a CIS-specific ODR framework. China, another important ODR framework to examine. The ODR system in China is strongly state-led and heavily technology-driven. Major e-commerce platforms like Alibaba, Taobao, AliExpress, they operate their internal complaint handling systems embedded directly into the marketplace and resolving millions of disputes a year. One notable feature of Taobao complaint handling system is the public juror system, where community members help adjudicate cases, often supported by AI tools and automated workflows. At the same time, the Hangzhou Internet Court and other online courts show how digital adjudication complements these platform systems under state supervision. This combination of marketplace-based ODR and state oversight demonstrates how a strong state-private partnership can ensure both wide adoption and public confidence. China's model highlights both opportunities, like large-scale tech-enabled dispute resolution, at the same time challenges data privacy and transparency concerns. For the CIS region, these lessons are particularly relevant for designing a system that handles high volumes of e-commerce disputes efficiently while also maintaining trust and oversight. Final chapters are devoted to specifically the CIS context. Chapter 8, returning to the CIS, this chapter examines the existing dispute resolution landscape in detail. It shows that ADR remains largely confined to commercial disputes, while consumer disputes are mostly handled through courts, which are often inefficient, costly, and mediation is sometimes mandatory in areas such as family law, divorce cases, as mentioned earlier, but its use is minimal and largely symbolic. The chapter also analyzes legislative gaps, institutional weaknesses, and cultural attitudes to dispute resolution. It argues that the CIS requires a state-supported, technology-enabled ODR system that can directly resolve disputes while gradually building trust and institutional capacity. Over time, private actors may play a greater role, like it is in the United States of America, but the initial leadership should come from the state. And final chapter brings together the findings and presents a set of recommendations for developing an ODR framework tailored to the CIS context. It suggests the creation of state-supported regional digital infrastructure that allows consumers to submit and resolve disputes entirely online. It also recommends strengthening ADR institutions, ensuring coordination between consumer protection agencies, and introducing training and awareness-raising programs, and improve digital and legal literacy. The framework should include robust data protection standards, clear procedural rules, and accessible technological design. And finally, the chapter emphasizes the importance of adopting a gradual and flexible approach that can evolve with the region's institutional and technological capacity. In conclusion, in the CIS region, the e-commerce is growing rapidly, but consumer dispute resolution mechanisms have not been able to keep pace. ODR offers a scalable, efficient, and accessible solution to bridge this gap. And lessons from the EU, the United States of America, Canada, and China show that While there is no one-size-fits-all model, each experience provides important insights into what might be adapted to the CIS context. My research proposes a CIS-specific ODR framework that aims to strengthen consumer confidence and enhance access to justice and promote trust in the region's digital economy. So this is the final part of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that my presentation has provided some overview of how ODR can transform the consumer dispute resolution landscape in the CIS region. And I'll just, in case you couldn't see the email address, I once again share this in case you would like to share some comments, feedback, or questions regarding this presentation or my research in general. Please feel free to contact me by email using this email address. And I'll be happy for any academic cooperation. Thank you so much for attending this presentation, and good luck, everyone.